That was extremely interesting. Seriously, very, very interesting. I'm sure we're going to have an incredible discussion given this audience, but let's start with Dr. Ahmed, some comments.
I wasn't running away from him, so just need to go to the restaurant because it looked like this meeting is going to last for too long. I know you have so many questions for Jim, and I'm not going to stand between you and asking him questions. So my comments are going to be very brief. Let me start off by saying thank you, Adla, for organizing that meeting. The Distinguished Lecturer series at ECS was once one of the most important things where renowned speakers came from all over the world, and it was really a good opportunity to engage Egyptians, not with the other Egyptians, because you guys talk to each other all the time. The trick was really to bring someone to throw some rocks in a still water and get some new ideas actually happening. And I think today we have gotten more than our share of interesting ideas. So thank you, Jim, for a very thoughtful presentation. Now, let me move on to the next part, which is I usually never have difficulties commenting on anyone. It doesn't matter who, and it doesn't matter when, and it doesn't matter when. I always find something to push and not with him. I have a problem with him. The problem is the following. The problem is that I have read everything he has done. The problem is that I have known him for more than close to 20 years. The problem is that we discussed extensively before we made his presentation. And the trouble is, I agree with everything he said. So essentially, I had very little to add. But of course, once you are assigned the task of being a commentator, you have to come up with something. So let me essentially summarize what I want to say in three things. One, well, the nature of what I'm going to say is really more reiterating, emphasizing some of the points that he made. And I will probably link it a little bit to Egypt, which he stayed away from wisely, because he wants to go back to his wife. Now, the first point I want to make. The first point I want to make is politics and institutions matter and matter a great deal. If you want economic prosperity in any country, you cannot do it without good political institutions. Now, he provided a lot of evidence to support this. All these correlations with poverty indices and economic growth or value, right? I'm not going to do that. In his other book, in the book that Barbara referred to, the Why Nations Fail, they dismiss every alternative theory that anyone has come up with before they emphasize the point about institutions. They don't accept necessarily the idea of geography is the one that makes a difference. They don't accept that Protestantic ethics is the one that makes the trick. They don't accept the North and South divide, where the North is called people work a little harder and so on and so forth. And essentially, they build a really persuasive case as to why politics and institutions are the ones that make a difference in the life of any country, right? And we do go beyond that, of course. It's 600 pages. Is it 600 pages? Something like that. It's a lot of pages, let's put it that way. They look into incentives and how incentives are created based on some rational behavior among the different actors. I think we repeat what's in the book. You are really welcome to read it, and I would advise, you actually have not read it, to read it. I read it more than once. But I want to tell under that title one little story that is a factual one. I used to be at ERF at one point, the Economic Research Forum, and we always wanted to break new grounds and do something that's out of the ordinary sort of thing. And we had a question about, we wanted to do something about performance of firms and the factual impact of performance of firms. And we were the biggest mistake of our life, but we found it because I was sorry. I don't know whether it or not. It's probably 15 years ago, or 10 years ago. I mean, it's certainly quite some time. And in was full of economists. We said something, but you need to determine performance. We need good data, systematic, blah, 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 blah. And somebody else would say, we don't performance, and then we get into alternative ways of measuring performance and this and that. And then a third guy comes up and says, well, but what is the really relevant indicator that we are going to be doing, and so on and so forth. And everybody is taken away. Jim had one question. Why did the government data? Which is the political motivation for creating the data? And I'm probably fishing my human memory. I would say that these factors some makers be interested in them. And how are we going to take the political reality into account? The political day. In other words, what he was really doing that day is basically saying that politics matters and matters a lot and it matters everywhere at all times. And that has not changed from 15 years ago. I don't know if I'm saying something correct or not, but I believe that Jim was like the opposite of Bill Clinton, who was running for president. Bill Clinton was, his slogan was, it's politics, it's economics stupid. I think what Jim has been telling us for a very long period of time, it's politics stupid. I happen to agree with him, and I don't believe any country, Egypt or any other country, can make sustainable, serious that's my point. Second point. Politics is so important. How do we do it? I mean, suppose we all in the room agree that we need to fix the political system. So where do we start? But I think that and this is really emphasizing the point you made. We can do always guarantee good outcomes. We can get a revolution, we can change the political if you like. Achieving sustainable prosperity, and the answer is not always only at first hand. So this is one is the so-called collective action. You mobilize people not so it's costly to sustain anyway. Smart people like yourself would say, okay, so what do? We throw the towel and give up and this and that, or we think about it in a sneaky way. What is a sneaky way? This is what he called, or I am going to call, the level of unintended consequences. You introduce reforms that would change the equilibrium in such a, and these reforms will be consistent with those in power. And the end is that there will be to some gain that everybody will be better off. So the calling for major transformation overnight. And I have to also remind myself that you cannot improve democracy, you cannot improve it on people, you cannot improve it on society. Somebody claimed, whether that claim was justified or true or not, but somebody claimed that they were going to export democracy to, as an example, as a modern in this region of ours. Well, what was the outcome? Much worse than it was before. So the options that people, the reformed people have, are really too few and too hard to come by. And even if you by accident get into one of them, there are no guarantees that they will work or sustainable and so on and so forth. So I believe in the role of unintended consequences, and I believe in the and the trick for all of us is essentially to look for the entry points, the doors of creating a change that will lead to a better outcome for the entire society. That is what I completely agree with. Now, my third comment. In the Egyptian case, can we think of some alternatives? June gave us an example from England, an example from the US, And maybe the appliances also apply, I think it was learned from the US as well, apparently global. But I want to get a bit closer to where we are. And let's take one example, for instance, education reform. Some power that education reform is something desirable. It's a priority. It should receive the resources that it deserves. What will happen? With the crowd, the difference of responding to a desirable social action. So that is good for them. But at the same time, by educating people, allocating resources, you're getting more Egyptians, those to be better educated, more intelligent citizens. Eventually, these guys are going to demand what you wanted them to have in the first place. So, entry points of that kind, in my view, are the ones that can make the biggest difference in a transformation, and we went from a level of equilibrium to equilibrium. Industries, because the consumers much higher prices. It is actually a the evolution of the basically the science and it's in the interest to keep the incentive regime, the historical incentive regime as is, and the countries with some power and
in monopolistic positions, if you like, who are colluding with those in power, and society is not making progress. A third one, which Abla might object to, I would suggest, for instance, that the president should have an independent, there's something like the Economic Council, National Economic Council in the US. Of course, the president has a presidency, not necessarily the president as a person. We're talking about the institution of the president. A group of independent, not necessarily economists only, because I am not biased only for economists, but political scientists as well. I'm reminded of what I said, the world is ruled by the ideas of political scientists and economists. In fact, the world is ruled by little else. And then he goes on to say, what? And when they claim that they don't need theory, they can live without one. In fact, they are living by the wrong theory anyway. So I believe that is something, if this group of people, if it's legalized, if they are independent, if they have the integrity, it's not a question of whether we have a group of advisors or not. That is not the point. The point is what are the rules governing the operation of that institution, how independent is that group, where do they come from, how they come about, and I think that can make a difference. These are just 3 examples, but I am sure you can come up with better examples than mine. But essentially, that's in the direction of, in a second-best world where you cannot change things overnight, gradualism can be very effective, and taking some actions and specific steps that change the equilibrium favorably in favor of the interest of the population at large is the best way forward. Well, sorry to have taken so much time. I wasn't planning on it, but that's how it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Thank you. Excellent presentation and great comments. I don't know why you think I would object to having a council to the president. I would be happy. I would be more than happy to. Really. No, I'm an advisor to the president, okay, but this does not mean that we don't need a council. But my experience has shown that we need more than just an independent body advisor. need empowerment of that body so that the advice actually its way into action. Okay. Let me mention some few comments, but I'm going to be actually quite brief because I want to give you a chance, everybody a chance to ask questions to James. Very, very impressive presentation. And with every single word you were talking about, I was thinking Egypt, Egypt, Egypt. And this is a very scary, it's a very scary thought. Okay. Extremely scary thought, yeah. Okay. Even when we talked about, and we're very close to 25th of January, the revolution time, and we talked about the collective action not being sustainable, it's not only in Sudan. Okay. It was also at the time. They were not organized, so they would not survive. Even though the goals were actually very noble. I was in the writing of the Constitution, okay, not the last one, the previous one. The change in the Constitution is very much related to something different. If institutions are not working the way we want, then relevant. That is relevant to Egypt, and political desirability do not take place. And then there are 2 points that are bothering me a little bit. This business of unintended consequences is nice and very impressive, but and there's a very big but. And the unintended consequences can take a very long time. Okay? Very long time. We talk about, if you talk about the education system, 20 years from now, if we are still alive, يعني إذا كنا لسه موجودين, we are going to have some people who are educated and can respond, and that's a problem. Okay, that's a problem. This is number one. There is the issue of time to wait for unintended consequences to fix systems. I think is very difficult, and I think what's happening more in the world, including Egypt, is there is a lot of pressure that's coming from inside. We have some members from the parliament here. Okay. Most of people in the parliament do not necessarily make a push, but there are others who actually push. Okay, the private sector keeps on talking and hammering. We recently have a doctrine that just came out about the ownership of the state for things. This was a taboo. It was literally the elephant in the room 5 years ago. Nobody would talk about it or even mention. I mean, would go around the word army. You try to say, and then there are people and there are organizations who can do it. Why don't you say it? No, they don't say it. Now they do. And we actually have a doctrine, okay? Even if it's not the best doctrine, but there is something happening, okay? There is pressure. So perhaps the silver lining of all the disasters that are taking place are going to create the unintended or the intended, actually, changes. Maybe new disasters, maybe issues with the climate, okay? Because this is another concern. The examples you gave are old examples, and the unintended changes took place because of changing technologies, and they were basic technologies. So you could not see that 30 years from then on, the blacks are going to have a higher, there's going to be a better balance, a social balance, okay? Because it was so obvious that new technologies were really new for everybody. Right now, the situation is different. To trigger change, it has to come from the existing political authority, okay? And then it becomes really a big question mark. How can you push the political authority in any country now to go for something that will have the unintended? No, I think it's a lot more difficult. The room for action here, okay, is getting narrower and narrower with the advancement of technology. Already the advancement of technology is making a very big difference, okay? But I mean, this triggered a lot of thought on my part that we really cannot wait. Countries cannot wait for unintended circumstances. They are not likely to come because it's almost self-defeating. The political change is a function of the empowerment, and the empowerment is not likely to happen except with unintended circumstances. So the change will never happen. Okay, it's one point. Another point is a question that's often raised, and we heard it many times in Egypt. People are not ready for democracy. Democracies, we cannot have democracies in this type of countries. Okay, and then it's a question mark. People are not ready for democracy. So I want also to hear your thoughts about that. These are my 2 points. I'm being brief because I want people to have a chance. Okay. All right. We are going to, I'm going to take hands as they are raised, but please let us keep it brief so that everybody talks. Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you again for this very interesting and stimulating presentation of your ideas. I would like also to thank Dr. Ahmad Galal and
please
Dr. Abla. Yeah, okay. all
حط
right.
بوقك في الميكروفون أو
Three
الميكروفون.
points.
So, the voice. قرب المايك من بوقك please.
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me now?
No, cannot hear you. Take my mic.
Is it better now?
It's working now. Then you have to shout.
All right.
أيوه.
Okay, now I have three. I thank you very much for this highly stimulating presentation of your ideas. I thank also Dr. Ahmad Galal and Dr. Abla Latif for their, comments. I have 3 points. The first point about institution. I think you treat institution, and this is the same thing in all publications of the World Bank, as development-friendly institutions, democracy-friendly institutions. This is not true. There are institutions which are not friendly to development or to democracy. Bribery is an institution. Obedience of the ruler is an institution. I think you limit your institutions to formal institutions, but informal institutions that, many informal institutions are not favorable at all to democracy. So this is, I think, the first point that I would like to make. The second point is that you think of the elite as, guided by just one value. There's something called plurality of values. I don't know, members of the elite might be interested in democracy, but might be interested also in security. And I think our problem in the Arab world is that people care more about security than they care about democracy. So no matter how people are better educated, have higher incomes, etc., they care about security. So if democracy, I think for people in Egypt, democracy means Muslim brothers are coming to power. So we do not want democracy. All right. So, they prefer, security rather than having, a kind of political party or political organization that would change many things for them. So I think you have to, and I think also the elites are not necessarily interested in democracy so long as they have, easy life. Look at Gulf countries. Well, people there now are better educated, have higher income, travel all over the world, but they are not interested in democracy. We cannot talk about a demand for democracy in any of the countries of the Gulf. All right. So I think, you have to take these two notions into account. Now, about the unintended consequences. Maybe we have something in our recent history to suggest that, rulers are very much aware of the unintended consequences. Hosni Mubarak introduced communication technology in Egypt and did not think that communication technology would bring the January revolution in Egypt. Those who followed Mubarak know this very well. So, the little freedom that was allowed to the people, freedom of expression, freedom of association, that was allowed under Mubarak, prepared the way for the revolution of January 2011. So this is well known. So therefore, no freedom of expression, no freedom of association. So I think, we think of the rulers as stupid people, do not know the consequences of certain actions. So I hope this will be taken into account. But again, thank you very much for all the points you raised.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. I'm taking people by the order of raising hands.
Okay,
introduce yourself as the member of the parliament.
Mahab bin Nasser, member of parliament. Well, I'm representing Social Democratic Party, so I totally agree on democracy and would be would help in economic prosperity and reform and all these things. But, and again, a lot of people are talking about China as a model. They have the economic prosperity and they don't have definitely their autocratic regime, and people there are very happy and the very good dictator who is bringing us the economic prosperity and the good money, and we are living in a good welfare country, so we don't need anything else. This is something that people are talking about. The second point, which already has been said about if we have democracy now, we will get something like the Muslim Brotherhood, and they will not continue with the democracy. So they just go up with the democracy, and like other countries, we have examples, of course, of Iran, Afghanistan, things like that, and definitely we don't like to be like them. So there is always a lot of questions about democracy, even now for the well-established democracies, like what happened in England with the Brexit. the rise of the right wing in the whole Europe. This is all going after hundred years of well-established democracy. And again, the mistakes are going to be repeated again and again. So there is always a debate about this. If we're talking about the unintended, of course, consequences, I agree with Dr. Abla that if we are pushing for the education reform, definitely, but it will take 20 years. This is hopefully, I don't think that we will see any consequences before 30 or 40 years. So what are we going to do? Maybe the trade reform can work better than the education reform in getting sooner results. If we need really to see things getting better. Thank you for the presentation. It was very good, and I think this is all.
I go by order, Marish, I'm sorry, here.
Well, Professor Robinson, thank you very much for an interesting presentation. But you stimulated a question in my mind. I'm sorry, my name is Ahmad Sarag, and forgive me, I'm not a politician and I'm not an economist, but I'm very interested. So my question might be the simplest and most naive question in the room. But I listened carefully, and the correlation is obvious, democracy and prosperity, as you started off. The question I had in mind is, what is the causation? Which one comes first? And I look at China, for example, like the Honorable MP. So is it the case that democracy is still going to come to China? Because you mentioned the three examples of industrial revolution, green revolution, and women working for pay, is the way I understood it, which means higher household income, which means prosperity. So is it the case that those three examples you gave kick-started a prosperity that led to democracy, or is it the other way around? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Handousa.
Handousa, and I'd like to ask Professor James Robinson of whether you have come across examples at all where women and youth have made a difference in bringing about democracy in the sense of communities being involved in decision-making. Because I see it happening in the south of Egypt, where the government is spending massive amounts of resources on both social, even at the education level, training and voice. And it seems to me that we are allowed, as those who have power and are interested in reform, we do have a window of opportunity to engage that half of society in terms of the gender and the half of society which are under 40 years of age.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Please see first. Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, Hassan Ali. I'm currently the chair of the board of trustees for the Economic Research Forum. I'm gonna wear this hat, but I have a lot of interaction with Professor Jim 2 years ago in the midst of the epidemics. He was kind enough to respond to my invitation to give a lecture for Nile University about the corridor which was coming. And at that time, I tried to, pull something out of his bag about the prediction of the election. And I don't know if Ahmad, you remember, he said something to the effect that the election, which was 2020 at the time, might be taken by force, which actually is a good prediction because it almost happened. I'm gonna ask the same question after I make my comment about the 2024 and what you might expect. So just to give you a room to think about it. Yes, sir. Now, I'm gonna just comment about the economy is stupid and the politics is stupid. I have to say that sometimes I feel it's the law stupid. The rule of law is probably the one that might impact all of us, especially if there is room to create some kind of respect for the law. I think what happened in the US is not the economy, is not the politics is very much divided now, and what saved the democracy is the law. So I might want to rephrase it that the law is probably much stronger than anyone. When we think about what happened in Egypt, I think I have also to side with Abla's basically assumption that the law of unintended consequences, in addition to its long-term, currently could be also very short-term. If you combine this with the technical innovation that happened, if you allow this technical innovation to take place in the market or in the environment as a whole, you might get a very speedy unintended consequences. I'm thinking of widespread use of 3D printing on a global level, how this might impact the production model, the consumption model, and so on. I'm not going to make a long speech, but
Yes.
I want you to make a prediction also
There are
about
many hands raised, so let us please be very careful. I need to take someone in the back because he raised his hand a long time ago, and then I'll be back here for 4 people.
Thank you for your
Let us stick to 2 minutes, please, as much as possible. Thank you.
thank you for your presentation. My name is Muhammad Nusir, and I work at the private sector. For many years, I used to have a debate with my friends about how the Egyptian economy is performing. And I used to say, no, we are not on the right track. They used to reply and saying, okay, do you know better than IMF and other international institutes? I say, no, I don't know better. Definitely, they know better than me. And then at that time, they used to praise Egypt all the time until the last year, they switched 180 degrees and start to be loud in criticizing Egypt and saying, okay, you are doing 1, 2, 3 wrong. So my question is, how do you value and see the international institute like IMF and other? And do they play, those are the institutes you are talking about, do they play a constructive role or not really? Do we have to listen to them or not? And then my second remark about system 1 and system 2, we do have some people always apply system 1 and never switch to system 2. And they are very comfortable with system 1. And they never learn and go to system 2 again. Thank you.
Thank you. Here, and then Dr. Ali, and then.
Well, my name is Freddy El-Bayadi, a member of the Egyptian Parliament. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Robinson, for the great presentation. Thank you, Dr. Galal and Dr. Ablatif, for the valuable comments. Actually, I come from a Social Democratic Party. I'm a politician. I agree with you that political reformation and democracy can positively impact the social status and the prosperity. But when we think the other way around, sometimes we see that the economic depression and economic problems make people actually go and ask for political reformation. And the other way around, when we see countries that have prosperity, they have good social welfare. For example, the Gulf countries, they don't care much about political reformation. And you see that they are in good social welfare, so they don't care much about this political reformation or democracy. So how do you see this equation of the effect of prosperity and welfare on democracy, not the other way around? Thank you.
Dr. Ali, and then you, sir.
Okay.
When we're going to stop after Dr. Adil. So we have 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I have a comment and I have a question. First, when you talked about the British case, I think a major turning point was the Magna Carta, because it actually put law before royalty, which was in the 1200s. I could actually also argue that it was reinforced afterwards by the Civil War, Oliver Cromwell. It basically shook the royalty and put the law before the royalty, which is a major turning point. Now, many of the examples you put you show affluence leads to political change. I could argue even when you show the US case, this is 1950s after World War II, Bretton Woods, the US was in supreme condition. So it was really an affluent country. The same with India. So that's the question then, is economic well-being, does it really supersede or comes after? And if you think it comes after, could you show me an example in the recent history where country transitioned to democracy without actually transitioning to good economic welfare? My example is Korea, for example. Until 1919, it was ruled by an army general. It's still ripe with corruption until now. I mean, Samsung chairman was under corruption charges, and it's still not really, but it is a democracy, and it's definitely an affluent country. So what I'm asking you is show me an example where the political will first succeeded first, and then the affluence comes after. Thank you, sir.
And then Dr. Adel, and then.
Yusuf Ghazi, I'm currently teaching at Nile University. I need another example. In a situation where the monopoly of violence, absolute power is in the hand of very few, not necessarily institutions, but very few, maybe group, maybe elites, maybe autocrats, name it, whatever. Is there a case, a real case, where the gradual reform that you mentioned and Dr. Ahmad eloquently reiterated has worked recently or in the past?
Thank you very much. Adel.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Adel Biltagi, I'm the chair of the International Dryland Development Commission. My question to you is that you're talking about societies globally navigating on this planet Earth through a very dynamic transformation of the physical impact of climate change. This will affect societies. It will have a massive immigration. Professor Meyer in Oxford and others will say that out-migration could go up to 1 billion, between 200 million to 1 billion in the next 15 years. But this dynamics even is impacting countries like the States, $3 trillion in the last 4 years only of damage. And of course, the developing countries. With this, we need technology, we need knowledge, which come from science, to make a difference and to impact the population, 8 billion people who live now on this planet. My question to you, with this zones which has no boundary, with this volatility and the fluid situation, what's your expectation with all what you have said? If you navigate for another 10 years, what are we going to see? Countries are stable or countries is not going to be stable? Systems are the same. All what we know before will be the same, or there will be new page. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adel.